The world had barely begun to steady itself when the news arrived that Diane Keaton, the woman who had turned difference into dignity, had left this world forever. Amid the blur of flowers, the glare of cameras, and the flood of mourning words, a voice rose for the very first time, the voice of Dexter, the daughter Diane had adopted not by blood, but by pure and boundless love. With trembling honesty, she opened the door to a life the world had never truly seen. My mother loved more deeply than people will ever know. But there was a longing in her heart that never faded. Her voice shook, yet the truth within it shone brighter than any condolence the world could offer. Diane Keaton, held in the embrace of fame for decades, lived a life suspended between roaring applause on stage and the vast, deafening quiet of an empty room at night. To the world she was wit, elegance, and fearless individuality. But in the final hours before dawn, she was often just alone, woman sitting among yellowing letters and fading photographs, stitching together fragments of a love the world no longer remembered. She stood like a fortress for her children, yet within herself, she carried cracks she never allowed the world to see, cracks that smiles could cover, but never fully heal. In 1996, at the very peak of her career, Diane made a decision that stunned Hollywood. She adopted her first child, Dexter Dean, at the age of 50, unmarried, unapologetically independent. The world questioned her. Diane simply said, "I did not give birth to her, I chose to become her mother." Love defines its own bloodline. For years later came Duke, a little boy whose arrival transformed the rhythm of her life. Nights once ruled by film sets turned into lullabies. Schedules once filled with red carpets became school drop-offs. The woman who once said solitude makes me happy began to learn that motherhood was a kind of light that needed no audience. It simply existed, and that was enough. Friends said she mothered the way she acted, with artistry, fiercely protective yet quietly tender, famous yet merciless about guarding her children's innocence. Cameras could come as close as her shadow, but never too. Dexter and Duke, she wanted them to live like ordinary children. Schoolyard laughter, lazy homework evenings, friendships born from small streets, not fame. She taught them that peace was greater than spotlight, and kindness far richer than fame. Each night, she asked only one question: what made you happy today? In that one question, she was building a home, brick by invisible brick. The world saw a legend. Her children saw the hand that rested gently on their forehead in the dark, the kind of touch that makes fear fall silent. But like every extraordinary story, this too had its shadows. One day, inside her mother's studio, Dexter found a leather-bound notebook tied with a thin silver ribbon, worn at the edges, as if time itself had touched it. On the first page, just one line: "I loved him with every breath I had," and beneath it, one name, again and again: Al. She turned the pages: New York nights, half-spoken glances, silent car rides in the cold. "We didn't need to talk," Diane had written. "Silence felt enough, as long as we were both inside it." But fame sharpens love into something fragile. Calls unanswered, doors quietly shut, a wine glass never touched, only waited beside. I was afraid that one more call would make him disappear forever, and yet, he always returned, smiling like nothing had ever happened. And she, strong, fierce, yet heartbreakingly soft, forgave him every time. "Why did I stay?" she wrote. "Because I believed that one day, he would love me the way I loved him." Rome, 1990, a balcony at dusk, laughter shining like water in her eyes. And then the one question that cut destiny like a blade: marriage or goodbye? Silence was his answer, and love, like a thin silk thread, quietly split. The next morning she left the city and never returned to him again. But love does not end when goodbye is spoken. It simply finds new places to live, behind an old photograph, inside a folded letter no one else will ever read, in the memory of a song that plays once a year, for reasons no one else will ever understand. Time moved, roles changed, the world kept applauding unaware. She kept building morning routines, pouring milk, choosing school clothes, always ending with the same soft question: what made you happy today? To the world, she was brilliance. To her children, she was sunlight, quiet, unwavering, and always there. The body, too, began to write its own story, the scars from skin cancer surgeries, gently traced in the mirror each morning, met always with a brave, small smile. But the unseen wounds were deeper, a lifelong battle with an eating disorder that was never vanity, but the echo of a fear, of emptiness, of being unseen. She seldom spoke of pain, but she wrote gratitude. Tiny handwritten lines: breakfast with my children, the sun setting on the rooftop. To have been truly loved even once is enough for a lifetime. These were not notes, they were survival. In her final months, she chose not a hospital, but sunlight. Not strangers, but her children. The house she had designed herself became her final stage. Old jazz softly breathing through warm air. Tea, wooden floors. Silence, the kind that is not empty, but full. Dexter and Duke took turns at tea. Blankets, old movies. Always trying to bring back that smile that came after every performance of her life. And then, one quiet October morning, California sunlight pulling gently through the glass. The tea still warm, her glasses resting beside an open journal. The last line she wrote: I have lived, and love kept me more alive than life ever did. And there she was, sitting in her chair at peace, not with silence, but completed by it. Her family released only one sentence: Diane passed peacefully, in her home, in her light, in the world she built with her own hands. It was not grief, it was testimony. Candles glowed through the windows. People gathered quietly outside, a white turtlenecks folded beside flowers. On a handwritten card: you made us brave enough to be ourselves. The Academy's tribute lit cinema screens across the world. Annie Hall reads. Marvin S. room, fragments of love and loneliness entwined like living poetry. Someone wrote, she was the quiet mirror of my heart. Someone else whispered, she made us believe that being unconventional could be an act of beauty. There was no noise in the tribute, only the sound of truth. But beyond all public mourning, a private ache remained. At Dexter's voice, low, steady. No one came. Not one person from the world she gave everything to. Not bitterness, just truth. And truth is sometimes salted, it stays in the corner of the eye. Yet the real story, as always, does not end with death. It begins where the first page was written. 1946 Los Angeles. A city of laughter worn like masks. A home where smiles were practiced, not felt. Diane learned early that silence could hide 1,000 unsaid goodbyes. She refused that life. At 20, she walked into New York winter with empty pockets, a cracked apartment, and a fire the world was not yet ready for. She auditioned barefoot, sang in smoke, wrote dreams on scraps of paper. Greatness is never born in comfort, it is carved out of cold. Her first stage did not make her famous, it made her seen. Then came The Godfather, and silence became her language. Then Annie Hall, and the world met a woman who did not perform, she simply existed. And yet, with success came an invisible fracture. Am I still enough? No one knew she rehearsed lines long after filming ended, not out of discipline, but out of fear of being forgettable. If cinema became her identity, home became her truth. She restored houses like souls, rescuing forgotten architecture, preserving history like prayer. Her rooms were not decorated, they were remembered. And then motherhood, not performance, not script, just the quiet art of asking every night, what made you happy today? Because happiness, to her, was not loud. It was gentle, safe, a place where a child falls asleep, unafraid. After her passing, nothing in the house was moved. Not a book, not a frame, not a shadow. Everything remained exactly where she had last touched it, as if the house itself refused to let her go. Dexter's last words sealed this story. She once told me, if she could choose again, she would still choose me and Duke and I. If I could choose again, I would still choose to be her daughter, even for one more day. This is not tribute. This is a philosophy. Love does not require blood, only steadfastness. And steadfastness is what turns a house into a home. History will remember Diane Keaton as light, but those who truly saw her will remember the woman who held a teacup in quiet mornings and asked, what made you happy today? Because this story does not end. It restarts in every soul who is afraid of being different, and then chooses to be. In every smile born from pain, not denial. In every life touched not by perfection, but by honest humanity. She taught us, you do not need to be flawless. You only need to be real. That vulnerability is not weakness, it is art. That laughter is not escape, it is courage. And when life becomes unbearably loud, may we all remember to pause in that same sacred kind of silence and whisper, I choose love. The rest, let the light carry.